What if the answer is not another hour of repeating the promise, but the first obedient step that promise has already been asking you to take? Now, do not misunderstand me. Confession matters. Scripture teaches that believing in the heart and speaking with the mouth belong together. Faith does not wait for the bank account, the medical report, the emotion, or the circumstance to give it permission to believe. Faith receives the word as true before the natural evidence agrees. But notice something else. The same Bible that teaches us to speak also teaches that faith without corresponding action is lifeless. So believing and doing are not enemies. Confession and obedience are not competing methods. Your words declare, I agree with God. Your conduct says, because I agree with God, I am prepared to respond. Faith speaks, faith expects, faith listens, and when direction becomes clear, faith responds. Say that aloud, faith responds. Some people keep confessing because they are standing firmly on the promise. That is right. But others keep confessing because they are postponing something they already know to do. They are asking God for reconciliation while refusing to make the call. They are asking for provision while ignoring the honest opportunity before them. They are asking for peace while continually rehearsing anxiety. They are asking for direction after direction has already come. You see, another confession cannot take the place of obedience. Think about a doorway. Confession announces that the door is open. It agrees that access has been provided. But obedience takes the step through that door. Your step did not build the house. It did not create the opening. It did not earn your entrance. It simply brought your movement into agreement with what was already available. That is what I want you to see. Action does not purchase the promise. Action gives expression to faith in the promise. Now bring one unresolved matter before your heart. Do not rush. Is it healing? Provision. A relationship that needs attention. A decision that requires direction. Perhaps it is a correction you have resisted because you hope prayer would make the adjustment unnecessary. Do not decide upon some dramatic action yet. Faith is not recklessness, and pressure is not guidance. We are not going to manufacture an outcome or do something foolish to prove that we believe. We are going to learn how genuine agreement moves from the heart through the mouth and into wise conduct. There is an order to it. Hear, agree, speak, discern, and act. Say it once. I hear, I agree, I speak, I discern, I act. Obedience does not weaken your confession. It completes the practical posture of agreement. But before we identify any particular action, we must understand that order, because action rooted in the Word is faith, while action driven merely by pressure is something else altogether. Now, that order begins with hearing. You cannot stand firmly on something God never said. Desire may be sincere, fear may be loud, and another person's enthusiasm may stir you for a little while, but faith comes from hearing the Word. So find the promise or instruction that actually covers your situation. Do not begin with what you wish were true. Begin with what God has said. Then comes agreement. Agreement is the heart's decision concerning authority. Your feelings may have an opinion. The circumstances may submit a report. Your mind may raise a dozen questions before breakfast. But agreement says, I have heard what God said, and I give His word the deciding voice. Notice, agreement does not pretend the facts are absent. It simply refuses to make them final. You may recognize a need without confessing defeat. You may acknowledge pain without building your identity around it. You may admit that you do not yet know the answer while believing that wisdom is available. Then agreement speaks. The mouth gives expression to what the heart has embraced. Speaking the word is not a trick for controlling God, and it is not a way of decorating fear with religious language. No. When the heart settles on the promise, the mouth says, "That is where I stand." You believe and therefore you speak. But after speaking, expectation must follow. If you have prayed in faith, you do not spend the rest of the day trying to persuade God to hear the prayer He already heard. You begin to thank Him. You stay steady. You watch for wisdom, opportunity, correction, peace, or some other form of provision that may not look the way you first imagined. Some people ask for an answer and then reject it because it arrived wearing work clothes. They expected a miracle to knock on the front door, and wisdom came quietly through the side gate. Are you following me? Faith expects God to answer, but it does not dictate the wrapping. Then comes discernment. Discernment asks what response agrees with Scripture, love, wisdom, peace, and honest responsibility. Not every urge is guidance. Panic can give instructions. Pride can give instructions. Offense can give instructions. That is why you listen with the word open and the heart quiet. And when the direction becomes clear, you act promptly, yes, but proportionately. The response may be a conversation, an application, a gentle physical movement, an act of generosity, an apology, a correction, a request for counsel, or a deliberate period of rest. Faith does not demand that every step be dramatic. It asks that the step be obedient. Suppose you need wisdom about a decision. You first hear the promise that God gives wisdom to those who ask in faith. Then you agree, wisdom is available to me. Next you ask and you speak accordingly. I will not keep calling myself confused. God is helping me see clearly. Then what? You quiet the panic. You stop interviewing fear as though fear were an expert advisor. You thank God, consider the information honestly, notice the next sound responsibility, and take it. Perhaps you make one call. Perhaps you gather one missing fact. Perhaps you wait overnight instead of signing under pressure. That is the sequence working. Say it with me again. I hear, I agree, I speak, I discern, I act. Now ask yourself, where do I usually stop? Some hear but never agree. Some agree inwardly but continually speak against it. Some speak correctly but remain unprepared for an answer. Some discern the right step and postpone it until the opportunity passes. And some skip the order altogether. Action without hearing becomes self-direction. Speaking without heart agreement becomes empty repetition. Discerning without acting becomes delayed obedience. Acting without discernment becomes presumption. But when the order remains intact, we do not reduce faith to words alone, and we do not reduce it to human effort. The word supplies the foundation, the heart agrees, the mouth declares, expectation watches, discernment directs, and obedience responds. That raises an important question, however. If action matters this much, does our action somehow purchase the promise? Does obedience make God owe us an answer? We must settle that next, because until we understand the difference between receiving and earning, we will either become passive or fall into striving. Let us settle that plainly. The promise rests on God's faithfulness. The action rests on our response. We do not act to make God faithful. We act because we have counted Him faithful. Suppose someone offers you a gift. You did not purchase it, manufacture it, or persuade the giver to provide it. But if you stand there with your hands folded and refuse to receive it, the gift remains unused by you. Reaching out does not become the price of the gift. The open hand simply reveals that you are willing to receive what another has freely provided. That is the place of obedience. Obedience is an open hand. Remember the 10 lepers Jesus instructed to go and show themselves to the priests. The cleansing appeared as they went. Now notice, their walking did not create the power of God. Their feet did not pay for healing. They moved because they had received a word, and their conduct came into agreement with that word. The power came from God. The going belonged to them. The same relationship appears in daily life. A person may say, I have received peace, while spending every conversation rehearsing disaster. The confession may be correct, but the conduct has not yet caught up with it. If peace has been received, there must eventually be some corresponding response. Thanksgiving instead of constant alarm, quietness instead of endless checking, and a willingness to leave the matter in God's hands. Or someone says, I ask God for wisdom, but continues declaring, I never know what to do, I always make the wrong choice. Wait a moment. If wisdom has been asked for in faith, stop building an altar to confusion. Agreement begins to say, God is helping me. I will listen. I will consider the next sound step. Sometimes that step exposes an adjustment we would rather avoid. We wanted a spectacular answer, and the instruction is to forgive. We wanted sudden provision, and the next step is to finish the application. We wanted a relationship restored, and the first act is an honest apology. We wanted direction, and the answer is to keep an appointment, seek counsel, correct our speech, or stop neglecting a responsibility already within reach. That may not feel dramatic, but it is obedience. And obedience does not need a spotlight. Be careful here, because pride can take a good principle and twist it. A person acts, sees progress, and begins to think, my discipline forced this result, my boldness made God move. No, that is not faith. That is self-congratulation, wearing religious clothes. Every step of obedience still depends upon grace, the strength to respond, the wisdom to know how, and the promise beneath the whole matter come from God. So examine the action you are considering. Ask yourself, am I doing this to deserve an answer? Or am I responding with gratitude because I have placed the answer in God's hand? Am I trying to force God, impress people, or prove something about myself? Or am I simply following the light I have? That heart check matters. If action is payment, you will become anxious about whether you have done enough. If action is leverage, you will become offended when results do not follow your timetable. If action is performance, you will always need somebody watching. But if action is agreement, you can obey quietly. You can move boldly without boasting. You can make the call, forgive the offense, complete the task, or receive counsel while trusting God rather than trusting the action itself. Say this aloud. My obedience does not buy the promise. My obedience expresses my agreement. That is the balance. Obedience is not payment. It is not leverage. It is not proof staged for spectators. Obedience is agreement wearing work clothes. And once we remove the strain of trying to earn what God gives by grace, the inward character of real faith becomes easier to recognize. Genuine faith is active, certainly, but at the same time, genuine faith is settled. Faith has a rest to it. Unbelief is restless. It keeps checking, straining, reopening the request, and asking for one more sign that God really heard. It prays, then worries, asks, then begs again, speaks the promise, then spends the afternoon measuring the problem. Faith can be active, very active, and still be settled. Scripture tells us to bring our requests to God with thanksgiving, and then His peace guards the heart and mind. Notice the order. The request is presented, thanksgiving follows, and peace takes its place as a guard. Thanksgiving marks a change of position. You are no longer trying to convince God to listen. You are acknowledging that He has heard. That does not mean you never mention the matter again. It means you speak about it from a different position. Instead of saying, God, are you going to do anything? You say, Father, I thank you that this matter is in your hands. I thank you for wisdom. I thank you for strength. I thank you that you are guiding me. Sometimes the first evidence of that change is not an outward event. It is inward peace. Fear loosens its grip. The mind becomes clearer. Strength rises to face the next responsibility. Those are not second-rate results. Do not despise what God begins within you merely because nothing outside has moved yet. Think of a traveler seated at the correct airport gate. That traveler is not wandering through every terminal, pounding on locked doors, or asking every 5 minutes whether the destination still exists. The ticket is settled. The gate is known. So the traveler can sit quietly while remaining attentive to the announcement. Stillness in that setting is not surrender. It is confidence joined with readiness. Now, emotion itself is not the test. You may have tears in your eyes and faith in your heart. You may feel concern, notice discomfort, or face unanswered questions while remaining anchored in the Word. Faith is not pretending that human emotion has disappeared. The question is this: beneath the emotion, what has your heart decided? But there is another side to this. Do not confuse genuine rest with numb avoidance. Avoidance says, I am trusting God, when it really means I do not want to face the responsibility. Genuine rest remains willing. It can sit quietly when the instruction is to wait, and it can rise promptly when the instruction is to move. Rest listens. Avoidance hides. Let us make a brief adjustment together. Bring that settled request to mind. Name it before God without rehearsing every frightening detail. Now say, Father, I thank you that you heard me. I release the strain. I receive your peace, and I am attentive to your direction. Then become quiet for a moment. You are not trying to manufacture a feeling. You are simply refusing to let panic run the meeting. Now I ask a better question. Not what action would look the boldest. Not what could I do so everyone would know I believe. Ask, what response naturally fits a heart that has received peace? Perhaps peace will help you make the call without accusation. Perhaps it will help you review the facts without fear. Perhaps it will help you rest tonight and decide tomorrow. Perhaps it will give you strength to complete the responsibility already before you. Resting faith is neither lazy nor agitated. It is settled enough to listen and willing enough to obey. But remember, even a settled heart must not call every impression divine direction. Peace gives us a clearer place from which to listen. It does not remove the need to test what we hear. So before we call the next impression obedience, we must learn how to discern whether that step agrees with the Word, with wisdom, and with love. The first boundary is always the Word. No inward impression gives you permission to abandon truth, love, integrity, or responsibility. If an impulse requires you to become dishonest, cruel, manipulative, or careless, you do not need 3 more signs to determine whether it came from God. The Word has already settled the matter. Now, guidance does not always arrive with thunder and lightning. Sometimes it comes as peace. Sometimes it is an inward check that says, do not go that way. Sometimes a neglected responsibility comes back to your attention. Sometimes practical wisdom grows clearer as you pray. And sometimes the light comes gradually enough for one step, but not enough to show you the whole road. That is where these simple tests can help. First, use the consistency test. Ask, does this step agree with the promise I am standing on and with the kind of character Scripture calls me to display? You cannot claim to believe for reconciliation while planning revenge. You cannot confess provision while preparing to deceive somebody. The direction and the Word must agree. Second, use the motive test. Why do you want to take this step? Is trust moving you, or are you trying to silence fear? Is love directing you, or do you want to punish somebody? Are you obeying God or trying to impress an audience? A right action performed from a frantic motive may need to wait until the heart becomes settled. Third, use the proportion test. Is this the next honest step available, or is it a reckless leap intended to prove that you have faith? Faith does not need theatrics. If the next step is to make one call, make one call. If it is to gather reliable information, do that. You do not have to jump over the whole staircase to demonstrate that you trust the builder. Fourth, Use the peace and patience test. Can you take this step without panic? Can you remain teachable? Can you adjust if more light comes? Faith may move quickly, but it does not have to be driven by terror. Pressure says, do something, anything right now. Wisdom says, do the right thing at the right time. Fifth, use the counsel test, especially when the decision carries serious consequences. Mature spiritual counsel, professional care, and reliable information are not enemies of faith. Refusing every form of help does not make a person more spiritual. Sometimes the obedient act is to ask a qualified person the question you cannot answer alone. You can pray with your understanding, bringing the promise and the known facts before God, and you can also yield in prayer concerning matters beyond your knowledge. Those belong together. But neither form of prayer excuses you from careful obedience when clarity comes. Suppose you are believing for reconciliation. Anger says, call them and make them pay. That fails the love test. Fear says, never speak to them again. Endless delay may fail the obedience test. Pride says, apologize, but make sure they understand it was mostly their fault. Well, that is not much of an apology, is it? But perhaps a humble, bounded conversation passes the test. It agrees with truth and love. Its motive is restoration rather than control. It is proportionate. You can approach it without panic, and you remain willing to receive counsel about healthy boundaries. That may be your next faithful step. Write down one possible action concerning the matter before you. Then ask, is it consistent with the Word? Is my motive trust and love? Is it proportionate? Can I do it with peace and patience? Have I received the counsel this decision requires? Do not treat those questions like a machine that produces divine answers. We are not operating a formula. We are walking in fellowship with God. Principles give us boundaries, but fellowship keeps the heart listening, humble, and alive. Say this, I will not call impulse obedience. I will test the step, and I will follow the light I have. Now that we have a reliable filter, let us bring this teaching down into ordinary life and see what corresponding action may look like in healing, provision, relationships, correction, generosity, and rest. Corresponding action is not always dramatic. In fact, it is often so ordinary that a person can overlook it while waiting for something spectacular. Faith may produce a bold public act, but it may also produce a quiet decision made in the kitchen, an answered message, an honest apology, or a night of needed rest. Consider healing. You receive the Word, refuse to let fear govern your speech, and remain attentive to wisdom. If a gentle movement is appropriate, you may make that movement as an expression of confidence rather than as a test. You may follow sound care without treating care as your source. And sometimes the faithful response is to rest deliberately, saying, I am not surrendering to fear. I am giving my body the rest it needs, while my heart remains settled in God. Ask yourself, what would agreement sound like here? What would it expect? What wise action would fit it? Now consider provision. It is right to confess that God supplies your need, but do not ignore the natural means through which provision may come. Look at the work available. Answer the message. Prepare the application. Return the call. Steward what is already in your hand. Perhaps wisdom shows you an unnecessary expense. Perhaps an opportunity opens that does not resemble the answer you imagine. Do not speak lack over every step while asking God for supply. You cannot say nothing ever works for me and then call that expectation. Agreement sounds thankful, expects guidance, and remains diligent. Then there is generosity. Giving can become a powerful expression of trust when it is prompted by love and governed by wisdom. It says, fear will not close my hand. But do not give because somebody pressures you, frightens you, or suggests that you can purchase God's favor. Guilt is not guidance. Manipulation is not faith. Give freely, responsibly, and with a willing heart. What would agreement sound like? What would love expect? What one action would express trust without pressure? Now take reconciliation. Faith does not merely say, I forgive, while feeding the offense every morning and serving it again every evening. Forgiveness is a decision of obedience. It may lead you to make a call, offer an apology without excuses, or stop retelling the injury to every willing listener. It may also lead you to establish a truthful boundary. You are responsible for your conduct. You cannot force another person's response. Ask, what belongs to me here? What can I do in love? What must I stop rehearsing? Sometimes the breakthrough requires correction. That is the part people do not always shout about. You pray for freedom, and the answer comes as instruction. Stop the careless habit, change the schedule, repair the dishonest conduct, or finish what you have continually postponed. You ask God to change the circumstance, and He points to an adjustment within your responsibility. Do not keep asking for a different answer, because the first answer requires humility. If the light has come, walk in the light you have. What would agreement sound like now? Perhaps it would say, I receive correction without condemnation. What would it expect? Growth. And what action would fit it? Make the adjustment. The same principle applies to strength and peace. If you believe God is strengthening you, stop planning every hour around anticipated collapse. Complete the next manageable responsibility. If you have received peace, decline the invitation to needless agitation. Replace anxious narration with thanksgiving. You do not have to solve next month before lunch today. Do what belongs to this moment, and then persist. Corresponding action is not always one step taken once. It may be the same responsible routine continued over time. Keep your words aligned. Remain attentive. Make the next wise decision. Refuse to use the clock as the judge of God's faithfulness. Patience is not inactivity, it is obedient steadiness. Can you see how the same faith produces different actions? One person stands, another makes a call, another fills out the form, another gives, another apologizes, another corrects a habit, and another lies down and rests without fear. So do not copy another believer's outward action as though the action itself contained the power. Their step belonged to their instruction. Your responsibility is to hear, agree, speak, discern, and then take the step that fits the light you have. Say it aloud, I do not need outward drama. I need faithful agreement. That will free you from comparison. It will also keep you from mistaking noise for obedience. Because action varies from person to person and situation to situation, we must now draw firm boundaries around its most common counterfeit, frantic, presumptuous effort that tries to look like faith. Here is the difference. Faith acts because the word is trusted. Fear performs because it needs immediate proof. They may look similar from a distance, but they arise from entirely different places. Frantic action is noisy, it is hurried, comparison-driven, and resistant to correction. It watches what somebody else did and says, if I copy that action, I must get the same result. Then it checks every few minutes to see whether anything changed. If the answer is not visible immediately, it either does something more extreme or collapses into disappointment. Faith-led action is different. It can be courageous, but it remains proportionate. It can move promptly, but it remains teachable. It agrees with Scripture, respects wisdom, and stays inwardly settled even while taking a difficult step. Think of driving a car. Confidence may press the accelerator, but wisdom holds the steering wheel. Speed without direction does not demonstrate greater faith. It merely gets you lost more quickly. You need movement and direction. You need boldness and judgment. You need faith and wisdom working together. That boundary matters especially when healing is involved. Acting on the Word does not require a reckless display, denial of symptoms, contempt for medical skill, or unsafe behavior designed to impress people. You can acknowledge what your body is experiencing, receive appropriate care, and still refuse to let fear have the final word. Reports can supply information without becoming the ruler of your heart. A wise physical response may be small, a deliberate movement, a responsible appointment, a needed period of rest. The purpose is not to put on a show. The purpose is to walk honestly in the light you have. The same guardrail applies to provision. Faith does not justify irresponsible spending while saying God will take care of it. It does not neglect honest work, manipulate somebody into giving, or label every personal desire a divine promise. Faith trusts God as the source and therefore becomes willing to follow wisdom, practice diligence, and handle present resources responsibly. And in relationships, forgiveness does not mean surrendering every boundary. You can release resentment without returning to an unsafe pattern. You can offer reconciliation, but you cannot force another person to participate. Obedience governs your words, motives, and decisions. It does not give you authority to control somebody else's will. Now listen carefully. Acknowledging facts is not the same as surrendering to them. Faith does not need dishonest information. If the account is low, you can read the number and still trust God for supply. If the body hurts, you can describe the symptom accurately and still anchor your heart in the promise. If a relationship is damaged, you can face the history truthfully without declaring that restoration is impossible. Facts can help guide responsible action. They simply do not receive the final authority that belongs to God's Word. Before you make a bold move, ask 4 questions. Am I trying to prove something? Am I acting because I am afraid of delay? Am I ignoring wisdom that I would accept if pride were not involved? And would I still obey if nobody ever saw me do it? Those questions will expose a good deal. Performance needs an audience. Presumption resents counsel. Fear demands speed. But faith can obey quietly, receive correction, and wait without losing confidence. Perhaps you recognize that you have already acted presumptuously. Do not remain trapped in condemnation. Stop, return to the Word, admit the mistake, receive forgiveness. Seek whatever counsel or practical help is needed, and then resume with the next sound step. One unwise action does not require a second unwise action to defend it. Say this aloud. I will be bold and I will be wise. I will remain teachable. I will not manufacture an outcome. I will obey without performing. That is mature faith, confident without arrogance, active without agitation, and honest without surrendering its trust in God. And when frantic motion has been removed, another truth becomes visible. Sometimes the faithful response is not to move faster. Sometimes obedience means refusing to move until clarity comes. Sometimes faith waits, rests, seeks counsel, or says no to an impulsive decision. Patience is not faith doing nothing. Patience is faith extended through time. It keeps the heart steady after the prayer has been prayed, the promise has been received, and the immediate impulse to force an outcome has been refused. That is different from repeatedly asking in unbelief. Unbelief says, perhaps God did not hear me the first time. Patience says, God heard me, so I will remain thankful, attentive, and ready. One reopens the matter because it is afraid. The other holds its position because it trusts. Now, waiting on God is not procrastination. Procrastination hides from a duty that is already clear. Waiting stays prayerful, prepared, and willing to respond. If you know you must apologize, do not call delay discernment. But if you do not yet know when or how to approach a delicate situation, refusing to rush may be wisdom. The same is true of rest. Some people have been driven by fear for so long that constant activity feels responsible. They think, if I stop, everything will fall apart. But purposeful rest may be the very act that confesses, God is my source, and I do not have to sustain the whole world by my own effort. Rest when rest is wise. Rest without calling it defeat. A body, mind, or schedule that needs recovery is not helped by religious pressure to appear endlessly strong. And sometimes obedience means seeking counsel when a decision carries serious consequences, or when emotion has made your own judgment difficult to trust. Ask for mature help. Get reliable information. Consult an appropriate professional. Wise counsel does not replace prayer. It may help you recognize the answer to prayer. There are also moments when faith says no. Do not sign an agreement because panic says the opportunity will vanish. Do not speak while anger is choosing your words. Do not give because coercion has made you afraid to refuse. Do not abandon appropriate treatment to prove that you believe. Do not force a relationship forward before truth, safety, and wisdom establish the way. Think about a traffic light. A red light is still guidance. Stopping does not mean you have abandoned the journey. It means you are honoring the direction that allows you to arrive safely. And sitting at that light with the engine running is not the same as parking the car and going home. So while you wait, practice 3 things. First, keep thanksgiving steady. Thank God that He heard you and that wisdom is available. Second, prepare whatever can be prepared honestly. Gather the information, arrange the schedule, strengthen the skill, or make your heart ready to respond. Third, refuse actions born only from urgency. Pressure may shout, but shouting does not make it guidance. Say this aloud: I can wait without quitting. I can rest without surrendering. I can prepare without forcing. Restraint can be corresponding action, but peace does not demand inactivity forever. When the light changes, when the step becomes clear, and when wisdom establishes the way, faith should respond without needless delay. Whether obedience moves, waits, seeks counsel, or rest, it must remain steady when the visible result does not arrive according to our preferred timetable. That is where persistence becomes essential. Think again about seed beneath the ground. A farmer does not dig it up every morning to see whether it is working. The absence of a visible stalk does not prove the seed failed. There is development he cannot yet see, so he continues the responsibilities that belong to him while allowing the process to unfold. Faith must learn to live through that middle period. Steadfastness does not mean reopening the request every few hours as though God forgot it. It means continuing in thanksgiving, keeping your speech aligned, listening for further direction, and carrying out the responsibilities already made clear. You are not trying to persuade God again. You are holding the position you took when you prayed. Now, contrary feelings may come. A report may be discouraging. The expected door may remain closed. Fearful thoughts may arrive before your feet touch the floor in the morning. Faith does not have to pretend those pressures are absent. It answers them. You can say, yes, I see the report, but the report will not govern my heart. Yes, I feel the pressure, but pressure will not choose my words. I will return to the Word, receive wisdom, and continue responsibly. That is not denial, that is proper authority. And remain attentive, because new guidance may refine your action. Changing a method is not necessarily wavering. Perhaps you pursued one opportunity and learned that another is wiser. Perhaps you began a conversation and then recognized the need for counsel. Perhaps you plan to act today, but peace directs you to wait until tomorrow. If your trust remains anchored while your method adjusts to greater light, that can be obedience. Stubbornness is not steadfastness. I also want to speak gently to those carrying disappointment. You prayed, acted as wisely as you knew, and the outcome did not unfold as you expected. Do not let one confusing experience write your entire belief about God. Return to what is clear. Remain humble. Receive correction where correction is needed, but do not build a permanent conclusion from a moment you do not fully understand. There is room to grow without abandoning faith. Here is a simple daily pattern. Hear the word again, not to restart the prayer, but to steady your heart. Thank God for His faithfulness. Review the next responsibility before you. Act, wait, or rest as wisdom directs. And if doubtful speech slips out, correct it promptly without condemning yourself. Now identify the middle of your process. Where does weariness usually catch you? Is it after 3 days when nothing appears to move? Is it after a disappointing conversation? Is it when somebody else receives quickly and comparison begins talking? That is the place where you are most tempted to quit, overreact, or change your confession. Prepare for that place. Say this aloud. I will not dig up what I planted. I will stay thankful, attentive, and obedient. Patience is faith wearing work clothes. It is steady enough to continue, quiet enough to listen, and flexible enough to obey further direction. It does not become passive, superstitious, or exhausted by checking itself every 5 minutes. It simply keeps walking in agreement. Now we can gather the whole message into one personal, repeatable response, one sequence you can carry from this moment into the actual matter before you. So let us return to the question with which we began. What if the answer is not another hour of repeating the promise, but the first obedient step that promise has been asking you to take? Another confession may strengthen your heart. Keep the word in your mouth. But do not use confession to postpone an instruction that has already become clear. Faith hears what God has said, agrees in the heart, speaks in alignment, discerns through the word and wisdom, and then acts without striving. Bring one specific matter before God now. Not 5 matters, one. What promise or instruction governs it? Name that truth. Let it become more authoritative to you than fear, pressure, or impatience. Now state your agreement aloud. Father, I believe your word. I thank you that you heard me. I receive your wisdom and I am willing to obey. Then become quiet. Is the next response an action? Is it an adjustment? Or is it a deliberate wait? Test what comes. Is it scriptural? Is it loving? Is it honest? Is it wise and proportionate? Does it belong within your sphere of responsibility? If the action requires you to control another person, ignore wisdom, or prove yourself before spectators, set it aside. But if the step passes those boundaries, make a concrete commitment within the next day. Perhaps you will make the call, seek counsel, complete the task, give freely without pressure, correct the conduct, take the wise physical step, or rest on purpose while keeping your heart thankful and ready. Do not promise a grand performance. Commit to the next faithful step. Say this with me. The Word is my foundation. My confession is my agreement. Discernment gives direction. Obedience gives expression. Patience keeps me steady. That keeps grace and responsibility together. You are not trying to earn the promise. You are not attempting to force an outcome. You are not substituting human effort for trust in God. You are bringing your words, expectations, decisions, and conduct into harmony with what you believe. Hear, agree, speak, discern, act. Then keep thanking God. Keep listening. Keep your speech aligned. If the instruction is to move, move wisely. If it is to wait, wait faithfully. If further light comes, follow it without fear. You do not need somebody else's dramatic action. You need your own honest obedience. You do not need frantic motion. You need settled agreement. And you do not need to prove that you believe. You simply need to walk consistently with what you have believed. The word is spoken. Your heart is agreed. Now let your life answer.